Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to see all of you, my colleagues in our Arizona Impact Mastermind group, which we refer to by the acronym AIM, A-I-M, a group of coaches in Arizona who practice independently but meet monthly to connect, share resources, and maximize our impact individually and collectively. Today, we're gathering to discuss Tom Rath's book, Life's Great Question, Discover How You Contribute to the World. And we have decided to share our conversation more broadly. So to all of you here who are with me in the Zoom live, welcome, and to all who are listening, welcome to our virtual table. To kick us off, I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself very briefly, sharing your full name and what your emphasis is in coaching and activities. I'll go first on this. I'm Mary Sue Ingram. I'm a leadership and team consultant based in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I spend most of my time doing executive coaching. Barb, will you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Barbara Greenberg, and I'm with Launch Coaching, and I activate people to land in careers that are a great fit for their personalities, for their talents, and their values. And I also help businesses recognize their greatest potential.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, Misty.
Hi, I'm Misty Dawn Faulkner, and my coaching business is Become Your Extraordinary, and it's centered around really engaging with your life in a way that you're fulfilling who you really are at your core and how you bring that into the world. So I have a background in education, and my current work is with community organizations around ASU.
All right, thank you, Misty. Chuck.
Hi guys, I'm Chuck Jackson, and I'm an independent coach. I do a lot of work with nonprofits and also a lot of work with low-income kids, and I really do a lot of focus on trying to mentor people and help their respect. I'm a retired corporate executive, and I do some work with also with many small businesses and helping them work through this pandemic.
Thank you, Chuck. Julie.
I just love you guys. I'm Dr. Julie Wexler. I'm a retired educator. I worked most recently as the Director of Student Success using strengths with first-year college students. My business is Wellbeing Essentials, and my passion really is helping young people become everything they can and live lives of meaning.
So good to see you all, and I'm so grateful that we have had Zoom to keep us connected during this pandemic as we're in this almost 13th month of it. This book came out in February of 2020, and I missed it when it initially came out, and I think that one of the things that we're hoping to do today is to explore this book together. I think all of us were aware of Tom Rath's collection of books that he's written with such titles as How Full Is Your Bucket, StrengthsFinder 2.0, Strengths-Based Leadership, Well-Being, The 5 Essential Elements. And those are all books that I think most of us on this call have enjoyed and have worked with. So what we want to focus on in our discussion today is practicalities associated with this book. We as a group always are looking for tools and resources, and we share them with each other. So each of us has done an independent dive into this book and the associated Contribify inventory, for which an individual gets a code, and they can find out in the language of contributions that Rath has developed, what are their 3 areas of greatest contribution among those 12 areas that coalesce around the 3 basic functions that a team has to do: create, relate, and operate. And so that's the gist of what I'm hoping that we'll do today, is have a practical conversation. So I want to open it up initially and just ask at a high level, what is a value you see in this book that Rath has written, or in that Contribify inventory that is associated with it? So maybe it's a personal anecdote or just at a high level. Hop in. Who would like to share? Julie, great. Dr. Wexler, my dear friend Julie.
You know, I loved the fact that this really has 2 purposes, and that is to help us, in Tom's words, become more human, which I think that's just a lovely sentiment. And the other side is a little more practical for those of us working as coaches, and that is how we can help teams really identify what it is they bring so that everyone isn't running in parallel, but instead are bringing a variety of contributions to the team. So I just thought those two things really made sense.
I love that. So frame those again, the two things, 1, 2.
The individual piece, helping us become more human.
Yes. And then the team piece.
Yeah, helping our teams not just choose people who are like us and run in parallel, but in fact, intentionally find people who can contribute each of those 12 things to the team.
Mm-hmm. I noticed your use of the verb contribute, which is at the heart of this book. Does anybody want to speak to this whole idea of contribution and this being a focus in development?
Yeah, if I could, I think that I found this to be just a really timely tool as we're really thinking about, we've been kind of on pause. And everybody, at first it was, well, soon things will return to normal. And then it was returning to a new normal. And just kind of in some of the circles in academia and just finishing a global conference and really having hard conversations around controversial topics, really starting to think about the idea and of what is it, instead of just kind of finding our way and this new normal is going to somehow just appear, what if we really start to create a better future? And in thinking about creating a better future, it really comes back to what do we have individually to contribute to our communities in an intentional way that we're building something that's going to be lasting. And so one of the things that really struck me in his book on page 14, he says, really the goal is to make contributions to others' lives that will grow infinitely in our absence. And so in thinking generationally, with 3 kids of my own that are, stepping into this world, I really want to make an impact and contribute in a way that it's not just for me right now, for my organization, for myself, but really thinking about the generations after the generations after generations of what are we doing right now that I can contribute to in a way that is going to have, a ripple effect in a positive way into the future, beyond what I can see. So, yeah.
Thank you. So I wonder, Barb, I see you, you've got an idea here to share, please.
My visionary. But I would like to add too, that this is incredibly timely, given what our circumstances have been like. And at the same time, it reminds me of connecting to sort of the values that we all have based upon our maybe our religious backgrounds, maybe our philosophical backgrounds. So this whole idea of making a contribution, that the world is bigger than just me, that my contributions and what Misty said, can have a ripple effect to the relationships of not just people that I work with, but people in my communities, people in the community beyond that, and then in the world. But these are ancient philosophies. I've been reading a lot of Lao Tzu, and I've been, looking at different religions lately. And the idea that that Tom Rath has been able to help us see how easily through this inventory that we can identify what's our best way of contributing, because sometimes it's really difficult. It's hard to have that self-awareness. And he's been able to help us more easily come to what we can as individuals can contribute to make the world better. I love this, just love this.
Chuck, what's on your mind at this high level?
You guys are making great points. I think, we talk about the timeliness of this book. The world has gone through some really serious changes, and we're kind of at that mind where we're at the point where we have to reset everything. And what a perfect time for us as coaches and leaders to be able to give back and to help direct that guidance, and give better guidance to people. I think for me, I looked at this whole process, and this is a time to reset your relationships with not only your community and your family, but for work organizations even. And you can get involved in this and you start to look at it and saying, from a point of view of saying, what can I do? What can I give back? And I think that's so important. I think we typically when we go through tough times, we kind of forget that part. This is an opportunity for us to really step to the plate.
Mm-hmm. Julie, I'm thinking about the name of your company, your business, and your focus on well-being. And where do you see connections between an orientation toward contribution and personal thriving?
That's a great question, Mary Sue, and something, I think Rath really began thinking about this perhaps when he wrote the Well-Being Essentials book, 5 Essential Elements. And of course, there it is.
Yeah.
In this book, of course, Rath identified these 5 things, and one of them is purpose, well-being. That without a clear sense of purpose, it's hard for any of us to really thrive in life. So when I read about contributing, I just thought, well, that's probably where that comes from. In fact, in this book, he talks about how much greater our well-being is when we're thinking about how can what I do today positively impact the life of someone else, mm-hmm. or the lives of my customers, or the future of this organization. But that outside focus mm-hmm. has shown to be directly linked to improvements in our well-being.
I'm thinking about Rath's work in the well-being space, and also his work in really illuminating a strengths-based approach, which is something that is foundational to what all of us do. And I would love to invite thoughts about how do strengths and contributions work in tandem? How, for those of us who have already introduced strengths in organizations, who are working in a strengths-based approach, how might this add to and complement what we're already doing with the strengths-based approach?
I have an idea.
Go for it.
So if we can think about strengths as how we go about behaving in the world, our actions, strengths are active, and this idea of well-being in our contributions, it combined with our strengths, the how, so the contribution is also a how we act, can lead us to the why. What is our purpose? So the contributions aren't necessarily the why part, but our values are. So really, if we can think about it this way, the contributions and our strengths coupled together can then lead us to our greater purpose, our why. And our why is a lot of how people connect with us. My why is I activate people to be their best selves. And it's a common thread that I see in everything I do. Even going back to my past, I see, oh, there's that common thread again of everything that I've done before. And I don't know, just something that I wanted to throw that out there to all of you.
Thank you. I've heard you speak before about big C contributions.
Yes.
And little C contributions. But what is the Barb Greenberg lowdown on big C and little c contributions?
Absolutely. So I think of a little c contribution, and especially the way Tom Rath has kind of illuminated this for me. The idea that when we're at work, we have the ability to make little c contributions, little c meaning to our team, maybe to our company, to the people who we impact in our customers, our clients, little c. But the big C contribution that even takes us to a higher sense of well-being is when we look at how are we affecting the world around us, our local communities even as a big C, our country as a big C, the environment as a big C. So the ripple effects are even greater. So not even just to our customers, but let's think about this on a grander scale. Like the idea that how I smile at somebody who is a customer of mine can actually have a ripple effect and help elevate them to smile at somebody else, and then who may smile at somebody else. And it just goes on from there. Mm-hmm. So that's how I think of our big C and little c contributions. This can affect how we approach dealing with ours in the whole world, not just at work.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about our own experience. I want us to get to what, as coaches, as consultants, what are some applications we can see for this within constituencies we work with, ideas we have for practical application. But I think we ought to take the medicine first. And to the extent that you have something to share about how, having taken this book and having received through the work that you did online and the reflection that you did, your own Contribify profile, I wonder if anybody felt a bit of a call to action on anything relating to the contributions that were identified for them as being their 3 greatest. Since I've asked this question, I should be willing to answer it. So my leading contribution from this Contribify profile is connecting. And one of the things this challenged me to do was to look at connections that I already have and how might we contribute with those in a different way, which led me to say, hey guys, when we talk about this, how about we record it and share it with other people, because maybe it will be helpful, which I would not have done but for this assessment. Well, not assessment, inventory. Rath is clear that this is not an assessment, but rather an inventory. So who else has a story of some way that it's impacted them as they've worked with this personally? Julie, I know that you did some deep work around this when you were first studying this book. Is there anything there that was generative for you?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm working on a project in my retirement to bring a new nonprofit to Phoenix. And briefly, the work of the organization is to mentor our most at-risk youth by a professional paid mentor for 12 and a half years. It's a unique model. It's in 22 locations. It's proven to have outstanding impact on kids and their families. And so I kept wondering, why not Phoenix? So the activator in me said, well, let's try to get it going in Phoenix. So the way Contribify has impacted me around that effort is it really validated what I was doing and why I'm so crazy passionate about it. So my first one is visioning. Keeping focused on how your efforts can impact a larger audience. So I thought, okay, well, that makes sense. The second one is connecting, like you, Mary Sue, adding energy throughout the team, advocating for others whom I believe most deeply in. And the third one is perceiving. And so knowing if maybe I'm on track or not. And so noticing that I'm really excited about this project and we're making great strides, I wondered, how is that possible? Because I'm brand new at this. But reading this little score, this inventory, really helped me think, yeah, I'm on track. This is good work for me to be doing. And it clarified and energized me. And so right after I took it, I made a couple of very bold moves. And some of them have started to pan out already. So
Oh, that's so exciting. I'm using my applause hands on my reactions on Zoom. That's so exciting. That's so exciting. Thank you for sharing that, Julie. Who else has something to share about an impact this has had on them personally already?
I can share a little bit. So I kind of made a pivot about a year ago, kind of in the pandemic. So right around the time that the pandemic started. So, and I kind of got more involved with 2 organizations at ASU. And on those 2 fronts, I came into contact with people who had been at the university for over 20 years. So we're talking 2 decades of, being at the largest university in the US. And they had these really big dreams and visions that I believed would be really instrumental in making big changes at ASU. And they didn't
Arizona State University. For
Arizona State University, yeah. And they didn't really realize at the time just how big those ideas really were. But they'd kind of been languishing in kind of the, they'd make a little bit of forward progress and then for whatever reason, things just wouldn't happen. And so in coming alongside these people and really helping to breathe life into them, looking back, this was really great because one of the things Mary Sue prompted us to do was kind of look back over the pandemic. And so the 3 contributions I kind of uncovered through this book were initiating. So really starting to get things going, and then energizing. And then the last one was teaching. And so it's amazing looking back how there were these people who had these great visions for having hard conversations or actually embedding spiritual support, making sure that we're taking care of the mind, the body, and the soul at our university for our students, thinking back to well-being, which is something that I do a lot of study around well-being and hope as part of my strengths practice and coaching. It really became something that all of a sudden we really needed to highlight well-being, and we really needed to highlight how do we have hard conversations around religion, ethics, and science. And so really helping to initiate those conversations, initiate new relationships, and then keeping the energy going. How do we make sure that people are committing to doing these things, and the long process and sometimes the hard work that it takes to bridge the gaps, right? When we're talking about academia and thinking about well-being and not just academics. And then really kind of teaching people the best processes and how do we actually look at coming together when it's so much easier to stay siloed in universities and even universities across the globe. So it's been amazing for me, I think, to just have that affirmation that while I felt maybe like I wasn't fulfilling, quote, my purpose, that I originally had really worked hard on through my strengths assessment to realize, even though maybe I'm not in the same realm that I thought that I should be working, I'm still contributing in very meaningful ways. And I find great satisfaction in that. And it doesn't have to look the way that I thought that it was going to look, for me to find satisfaction and value, I guess, in that.
Right. I sense in both you and Julie a sense of validation.
Yeah.
For your way of being and ways in which you can contribute, that you then have correlated to ways that you actually do show up. Chuck or Barb, anything here to share about impact of this assessment, inventory, this inventory, or this paradigm, the language of contributions?
Barb, would you like to go first, or?
Oh, no.
Okay.
You go ahead.
Interesting. My first is connecting. In the inventory here, and I looked at that and I thought, wow, it's interesting. And reading through that, it did help validate a lot of the things that I feel and I do. As a matter of fact, I made some contacts for Julie with her organization to follow up things that we're doing there, because my second one was influencing, and influencing is basically getting people involved in doing things. So they all followed suit, made sense to me, and reinvigorated me, I think. I think a little bit of I've been a little bit reluctant due to the fact we had the pandemic, but this really started to make things happen again. So it really did help a lot in reading through this whole process and considering the well-being, which is so important, especially for Tom. And I think because what he's gone through, Tom Rath, it is.
Speak to that just a moment in case someone listening to this doesn't know that story.
Tom Rath has gone through some very serious health situations. And he's overcome, and he's maintained and done an incredible job. Where he's still here, and that's the most important. He's surprised when he's still here, which is really great. And he's done a lot of great things, and it had a real impact. I think one of the things he says in his book here is that things that we do today will still be around when we're gone. The impact, and I think that is so important. And I think that's something that he's lived all his life, and I think that's something that I plan to do. And I think it just makes so much sense, because we should do things, and we should focus on doing things that will continue on and help the world. So
it will generate a fruitful legacy that has impact for others in good ways, and for the environment, whatever that target might be. Barb, what were you wanting to share here?
Sure. So one of the things I remember from reading the book was, and this is tactical and more of a practical representation of what I'm going to do with my coaching, is around resumes. So I'm a career coach. I spend a lot of time writing resumes with especially the young adults that I coach, and they're coming to job searching for the first time. And one of the things that I love that Tom Rath wrote about is this idea of, let's not just focus on the skills that we list out in our resumes. Let's talk about the bigger contributions that we've made. So especially for our young people who think about, well, look, let's talk about all the volunteer work that you've done. Let's talk about how you've made an impact in a bigger way to the people in your communities. That's going to be very attractive to the people who want to hire you, especially those that are going to be a good fit for you. Because in your life, if you're already doing this, you want to be in a space where they're going to be doing it too, and they appreciate that about you. So that is just one very simple tactical way that I have already been using it in my coaching, even in the last few weeks. I can't stop talking about it, and I had influencing like Chuck. I cannot stop talking about this.
I love it. Well, thank you for activating us to get into the practical. Yes, Misty, go ahead. And then I'm going to have us drill down into some specific applications, bouncing off of what Barb has just said. But Misty, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said, Barb. I'm the same way. I bought like 6 books the last week to send off to people and to give to certain people that I've been thinking about, because it is so useful. And I think, we're switching over from, the Strength Finder assessment to, this is an inventory. And it's been kind of a conversation we've been having, behind the scenes. And one of the ways that I've really been thinking about it, and that I love about the profile. So first of all, if I can just kind of, talking about the profile, I love the fact that it is an inventory. And when you are taking inventory anywhere, right? Inventory changes, right? It doesn't stay constant, it's changing. And so while kind of the product line that you have, for the most part is going to be pretty consistent, that inventory is going to change. So I loved the fact that they take into account and they put on that inventory your most influential life experiences. He calls them miles. And I really enjoy that piece. And I think that it's good. Your defining roles and your strengths are all part of that inventory. Because if you think about an assessment is just kind of, what do I have here, right? But an inventory is, what do I have that's going to go out, as kind of a product, as something that's going to go back out to the world. So I just really loved that idea of inventory to kind of, tie into that, and why I think this is such a valuable tool as a resume.
I love that. The inventory from which we can contribute, with which we can contribute, that is fluid, that aspects of it will continue to change. But like you said, the product line is probably going to remain somewhat consistent. Great way of saying that. So let's put on our coaching consulting hats. Barb's already kicked this off with a context in which she's using it with young adults with resume creation. Julie gave a teaser at the beginning about teams and how teams might be composed, how teams might work. I'd love to just open this up to your thoughts and to access your wisdom from your experience about places where you see this being of value to coaches or consultants, or to individuals who don't have a coach or consultant, but who might be interested in using this to help in development.
I'll take a stab at that. One of the things I just wanted to point out is that on the contribify.com website, there are some incredible resources. So the way into this tool is you can either buy the book, in which you will get 2 codes, or you can access the website. So you might want to just take a look at the website. But under the resources section, there are a number of tools. And one of them that Mary Sue highlighted for us earlier today asked a question that really stuck with me. And it was to reflect on, what are the 3 masterpieces that you've created in your life? The 3 best works of art that you have accomplished. And I thought that would be a beautiful conversation to have with a team, for people individually maybe to reflect on that, and then to share and to begin to see how, with strengths, we talk about strengths are complementary and the team is stronger when we're different. And there's a certain bit of that, I think, that's true here too. But when you look at those 3 areas, create, relate, and operate, it's important that we have people who are doing each of those things on a team. So if, let's say, the 5 of us were to look at our 3 masterpieces and identify which contribution we were operating from, it would be really interesting to see what we have and what we might want to go out and look for.
And that also brings a human level of relationship at work that I think is also undergirding Rath's kind of call to action to make work a more human place too.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Other thoughts? Thank you, Julie. Other thoughts? Yeah, Chuck.
Yeah, I think, and like especially in small businesses, I think this is going to be very important because this will be an opportunity for people to sit back and really think about what can they bring to the table, what can they do to help the organization. You may be reaching out further than what your job title is, but it's going to be very important for everyone to do that. I think, and that's going to be real helpful for people to think about this process. And I look at this, I was trying to think about it, when you think about strengths, I think about this this inventory, and I think he calls this his baseball card page, basically. So it's like one simple page. It's easy to look at and understand. For me, I see strengths as being a hardwired. This is how you filter life and see things. I think this is a different approach, a softer approach, and it enables you to relate more to the ongoing situation. And I think, as Misty said earlier, with the inventory, it can change. Because as I went through this process, I thought, okay, how would I have answered this question a year ago or 2 years ago? And so I do think I've changed in that respect there, but I think it's for the positive. So just some thoughts.
I have a question for those who work with young adults. How do you see this? And Barb has already talked about this with respect to resume creation. We all, most of us on this call, I think, are baby boomers, and Misty, your generation's a little bit below ours, but I'm thinking about, we already have a lot of miles on our odometers with which we've had opportunities to figure out where we can contribute, etc. But for somebody early on, where might be places that this could be introduced that might be of value, a context where it might be introduced, and what value do you see it potentially having in such a context? Yeah, Misty.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the things that I was thinking about, how I can actually kind of activate this in the space that I'm in right now. So I actually lead a spiritual support circle with the ASU counseling office. And I think that this actually, I have a meeting scheduled to talk to one of the heads of the counseling center to actually talk about adding another spiritual support circle with this lens of thinking about well-being, your well-being, and how you can contribute, so that they start to recognize that it's not about the grades in a world that's changing and it's very difficult, but knowing that you still have value just by being you, just by waking up this morning. You have value, but also I love that he talks about there's this both and, right? It's really important for you to understand the purpose and the strengths that you have. That's the strengths piece that a lot of us talk about, that there's value in that, but that where life happens is as it connects with other people. And so really helping them to kind of take that next step of what does that look like, even as we kind of forge into or forge new ways forward in a world that is going to look very different. We can't just all of a sudden go back to being on campus with 70,000 other people. So how do we do that in a way that we still find value at the beginning of their education journey, and not just at the end when they're writing their resume and now they're going back out in the world, but they don't have the same internships, because those have gone away because of the world that we live in, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a few people who have internships because they can work remote, but so many don't. Right. So, and I think that that's an important way for us to think about, that there are ways that they are contributing. Maybe it's that they're actually spending time with their friends who are struggling over Zoom, or they're setting up a game night. Those are all meaningful places that they are having impact, that they can keep track of, and I think is really valuable for them to even be able to put on a temporary resume of, this is how I'm making this work. And
and I'm thinking about another age group as well, and that is people who are the aging baby boomers who are retiring, and as they're trying to think, what will I do with this, I think that thoughts turn more to legacy at that point in life. We see that that's kind of the work of that period of life, legacy. And I could see value in this, helping people really isolate and find value in what are the particular types of contributions that might be the best types for them to look to give. So I can imagine it with that group as well. I want to acknowledge this time in the world that we're in. There was a piece that the New York Times published this past week that was a video piece about critical care nurses in Arizona who have been working in COVID units in ICUs, who you can't watch this video and not think, oh my gosh, the trauma, how drained they must be. And I'm very mindful of the fact that the pandemic has created a same storm for everyone globally, but we have been in different boats during that time. And so one question I want to raise is, in this context of COVID, I mean, I can't imagine us going right now to a group of nurses, you know, in their break room and saying, let's help you figure out what your greatest contributions can be, because, you know, they have been giving all that they can. What are any watch outs or sensitivities we should have about how, when, whether we introduce this to people? Yeah, Misty.
So I think I love that you said that, and I think that I think it comes down to good coaching. So because my best friend is one of those nurses who is struggling right now the last couple of weeks, and we've actually started to have some conversations around this, specifically because as part of the inventory, when you get that, so much of it is about well-being. And so we're not focusing on the external of how you show up at work, but we're showing, you know, we're focusing on the kind of last segment on maximizing your energy to be your best, and really kind of focusing on that portion instead of worrying about the other stuff, right? You've already done so much to contribute here, but let's really figure out how you can contribute from making sure you're taking care of yourself. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you don't have anything to offer anyone else.
Right. Two big pickups there. One being that this assessment does have a place for looking at how do we restoke our fires, with some tips for that given our typical way of contributing. And then also this idea that coaches need to use their discretion. Barb, what were you going to say?
I was just going to add to what you both said, this idea of, I think it's so important for us as coaches to be aware enough to meet people where they are. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that means we have to do a little bit of investigating and really think about, where is this person? You know, where have they been? And where are they with me in the moment? Right. And be able to adjust or adapt, which is another one of my contributions, because that's going to be really important for the other person.
Right.
That we're with.
I'm going to be mindful of our time and the allocated time that we have for this. I'm going to ask for a lightning round from our group, a call to action that to you emerges from this book that you might share. Might be either to a call to action to a particular group, a call to action to anyone who listens to this. And so I'm going to keep it very brief because we're going to bring this in on time. But Julie, what is a call to action that you might have?
I'm just going to stick with something very simple, and that's asking anyone and everyone you know that masterpiece question. What are the 3 biggest things you've done in your life? I think it's positive, it's uplifting, it's affirming and validating, and it can kind of give us all the energy to move forward.
Great. Love that. Chuck?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking about the nurses, and that the video we sent, that was an excellent video. I have 3 friends that are ICU nurses right now and COVID. And so it's been a real thought-provoking process there. And I've been trying to figure out what I should do there. But one of the things I think I will be doing with them is just having a discussion just to see where they are, because I think there's a lot of PTSD that's going to be there, for those people. So just seeing where they are and how I can help, and asking what I can do to help and contribute. But I think overall, just asking people, as you read this book, to think about the process and say, Now, what can I give back to my community? What can I give back to my organization? And I think that's the most important thing. It's just, what can I give back? What can I do? And I think that's what we have to really start to look at that side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Misty.
I would just say, just invite people to the conversation. I think that's the biggest way that we can start. Whether people take the inventory or not, whether they do the strengths assessment or they do coaching, I think the biggest thing in the world right now is we just need to invite every voice to the table and know that they have value.
Mm-hmm. All right. Barb.
And I want to piggyback on what Misty just said too, this idea of including everyone in the conversation. Sometimes when we think about a book like this, a lot of managers are reading it, maybe supervisors, but we have to remember too, everyone at every single level of the organization can make a contribution, can make somebody else's life a little bit better. I would love to see this concept, this idea shared with organizations and people at every level within an organization. I think that would be my call to action.
Okay, and I'll wrap this lightning round with my call to action, and that is, I think that we need to be in the practice of calling out the contributions that we are seeing other people make.
Mhm.
Where are people contributing, and letting them know what we're seeing that they're doing that has been a contribution. I had an experience this past week leading a retreat virtually. I had individual conversations with each person before. There was one woman in the organization who was saying to me, I don't know that I have that much impact here. And I know that she is a person who has led mightily on issues of community engagement, on issues of diversity and inclusion work, etc. And as I just in the privacy of our one-on-one shared with her ways in which I had seen her contributing purposefully and how she had impacted the organization, it was something that she had not framed that way. So my call to action is, tell other people where you see that they have made contributions. Don't wait until someone is gone to say the great things that are said at a funeral. Let people know where they're bringing value. And that is something that whether one reads this book and takes this assessment, this inventory or not, everyone can do. Any final thoughts from anyone? Is there anything that's been left unsaid before we wave goodbye from Arizona? I think we got it. Okay. Well, I love you all. It's so good to be with you. And I'm glad that we tried to find some way to contribute together during this midst of our non-co-located time. I so look forward to being around a table with all of you, hopefully sooner than later.
Yes.
Love you all.
Have a great time. Enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone.